What's up, Ravens fans? Welcome into a fresh edition of Ravens Unscripted, as always, coming to you from the Under Armour Performance Center. If you can believe it, we've hit the quarter pole of the season, and the Ravens sit at 2-1, but now they go into a brutal road stretch. 3 straight road games, starting with the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday night. So plenty to get into here on the Unscripted couch, and to help me do so, we have Garrett Downing, Cliff Brown of Ravens Media, and Dennis Pitta. Needs no introduction. Guys, as always, good to be with you. Let's start with 4 downs. And Garrett, I'll start with you. First down, what do you feel confident you know about this team after this 3-game sample size?
I'll start with the offense. I mean, I think this is the best offense that we've seen in a long time, and particularly the passing game. I think that Joe really seems to have chemistry with his new targets. I think that they are able to be a team that goes out there and throws the ball a lot and can put up some points. And I feel like there's some confidence with this offense that particularly last year, if you go back to last season, that this group just didn't have. I feel like the defense thinks that the offense can go out there and put up points, and the offense feels the same way. So to me, I think everything starts with the offensive firepower, and I think everyone's excited about that.
And I think this is a team that plays great in terrible weather. That's what we've learned over the first few weeks of the season. Anytime it's rainy and windy and awful out, they look pretty dang good. And Garrett mentioned the offense and the passing game that's been much improved, and I agree with that. But you look at what this defense has done. And I know last Thursday against Cincinnati when they lost C.J. Mosley, there's some confusion. They didn't play well for about a quarter and a half. But this defense has not allowed points in the second half of a ball game. They've been tremendous. You look at what they did against the Broncos on Sunday, and other than those 2 early touchdowns, one of which was caused because of a special teams problem, they didn't give up many points, and it was really impressive.
Yeah, I like the resiliency. Even though they didn't win the Cincinnati game, I like the way they played after they fell behind early. And I also think Kenny Young is a player. I like the way he's playing defensively, the energy that he has given the defense, how quickly he plays. I think even when CJ comes back, he's going to continue to be a factor defensively, and I think that's good for them. I really like the fact that this year's defense seems to be able to make some plays and do things to turn the game around.
Second down, Dennis, the offense. Garrett touched on the aggressiveness, the passing game. 12 for 12 in the red zone, I think, is a number that's really jumped off these last few weeks. What do you like about what they're doing this year that maybe they didn't do the past few years?
Well, like we've mentioned before, they have a lot of new weapons on offense, and that's helping them certainly in the red zone. Joe's able to spread the ball. He can throw to running backs. He can throw to tight ends. He can throw to all his new complement of receivers, and they're effective in the red zone. And you also have to point to this offensive line. They struggled a little bit in week 2 against the Cincinnati Bengals pass rush. And in my opinion, the Broncos have a better pass rush, and they handled Von Miller and company tremendously. They only gave up 2 sacks. Against Cincinnati, they gave up 4. There was a number of hurries. They looked much improved this week, and that will be the key to this offense having success moving forward.
Yeah, I think if you're playing the Ravens now, I mean, who do you try and take away? I think back to the Steve Smith years, you knew in tight spots, Joe kind of wanted to get the ball to him. Now, there's so many weapons that he has, I think they're hard to defend because you don't know who you're really trying to cut off, and I think Joe's been great with one guy. If he just kind of lets the play, his eyes take it where the ball has to be. He's not trying to force it to any one guy because he has confidence in so many players. That makes him a more diversified offense. I think that's why they're scoring so much more.
And Garrett, Marty's a guy, Morningwig, that took a lot of heat the last couple of years, especially after last season. What have you seen from him in what he's called these first few weeks that maybe gives him a chance to deserve some credit?
You know what I think he deserves a lot of credit for is his willingness to stick to the game plan that they've developed throughout the week, regardless of what the weather is on Sunday. I think a lot of times coaches would wake up on Sunday, see the pouring rain both the first week and the third week, and say, you know what, we're going to dial it back a little bit. We're going to go a little more conservative. That's not been the case at all with the Ravens. I think they caught the Bills, honestly, by surprise in week 1 because they stuck with the passing game, and they did it again against the Broncos. So I like that offensive mindset. Go out. You don't have to win a game 20-17. Why can't you go up there and put 47 points up like they did against the Bills? I like that aggressiveness that we've seen so far from Marty.
Cliff, third down, you mentioned Kenny Young. This defense, as Dennis mentioned, after that slow start, really strong. But the confidence level you have for this group to deal with the loss of Mosley, if it continues here for a couple weeks?
Well, I think it will be important for them to get a pass rush, continue with that. If you get a pass rush against any team defensively, I think that could help set the tone. Pass rush bothers any quarterback. So if that continues and they're getting a rush from a lot of guys, I think they can survive without CJ. But let's face it, I mean, he's a tremendous player, But I think just like when they said they wouldn't miss Jimmy Smith as much this year, I think it's proven to be true that this year, even though you want CJ to be around, they have a little more ways to deal with his absence.
I think the biggest thing is it can change week to week. I mean, you go back and you saw after week 2 when we were all saying, oh man, what are you going to do without CJ? They looked really bad there for a couple of series when they didn't have him. And then this week they play a lot better. And I think the defense had a strong showing and everyone's saying, you know what, they're going to be okay. I guess it depends, week to week. I think that this defense wants certainly C.J. Mosley on the field, and I think there still is some uncertainty about how long you can withstand him being out.
And C.J. Mosley's a guy that you really can't replace, but when he is absent, you're getting to be able to build your depth behind him. And I think one addition that helped the Ravens this past Sunday was Albert McClellan.
Yeah,
he's a veteran guy that was able to come in. Not only is he tremendous on special teams, but he knows what he's doing at the inside linebacker position. He could really mentor and help the young guys in Pina Dawasu and Kenny Young in that game. And all three of those guys played tremendously. You look at Pina Dawasu, he really made the play of the game on an interception and should have been a touchdown, which got called back. But and Kenny Young led the team in tackles. And so these are young guys that are very, very good players. And with Albert McClellan and that rotation of 3 guys, they can make up for the absence of CJ.
Dennis, I'm going to stick with you here. As a player, when you see the schedule and you see that you have 3 straight road games, 2 divisional opponents, the Sunday nighter against Pittsburgh, which we'll dive into much deeper later, what do you feel like, and now knowing this team, is the formula to at least get out of this thing maybe 2-1?
Well, I always liked road games when I was a player. And
why is that?
You like to go into a stadium and quiet a crowd. I thought that was always fun. You make a big catch or a big play, and the crowd goes silent. That was always really fun for me as a player. But here's the challenge to going on the road, and it's particularly with the offensive line. It is more difficult to hear the snap count in a loud stadium. You're at a disadvantage because now the defense and the pass rush in particular can really tee off, especially on the edges where the tackles and tight ends can't necessarily hear the snap count. So as a tight end or a tackle, you're really relying on movement of the guard or center to react to. And so you're always a step slow. And it will be their challenge on the road to be able to protect Joe in Pittsburgh, in Cleveland, in Nashville, in some of these important games. And if they can play well and they can play at a high level and protect him, they'll have success.
Well, it should be an interesting and challenging road. But we did see a fellow tight end make some plays last Sunday against the Broncos, and we'll talk more about him coming up. But right now, it's a chance to see the 360 replay driven by Triple A.
Black going 3rd and 8, throws down the seam. He's got Andrews at the 10. And the rookie makes the catch. He's down at the 5. 1st and goal, Ravens on a 28-yard gain.
Welcome back into Ravens Unscripted. It's a staple here on the show, the rating game. I'll present some statements or questions, and the guys will put a number next to their opinion. First up, Mark Andrews' play as the Ravens' #1 tight end through the first 3 games, 10 being the next Dennis Pitta, 1 being, I don't want to use anyone's name to hurt their feelings. So let's see what you guys have here on the Microsoft Surface tablets. A 7. From the former tight end, a 7 and a 9. Even though that's the outlier, I got to go with Dennis just because it's part of the brethren, the fraternity.
Yeah, listen, I'm not willing to give a rookie a 10 at this point.
I wasn't expecting you to give him a 10. And that's not a bad number either.
7 is a really good number, to be honest, because he's been really good to this point. You saw him last week. He was really effective, created a couple big plays for this offense when they needed it. His first catch was wide open. I think Garrett could have made that catch, but nonetheless, an impressive hurdle to finish, showed his athleticism. And the catch that really stood out to me was late in the game, down the seam with a defender on his back. The concentration to be able to pull that one down, and a terrific throw by Joe Flacco. I think we got to give that credit as well. But tremendous catch in traffic in a big moment. I was really impressed with what he did. And keep in mind, it'll be interesting when Hayden Hurst is back in the mix because all through the offseason, through training camp, Hayden Hurst was the name we were talking about. It wasn't Mark Andrews. And so Mark has been really impressive when given his opportunity, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out when Hayden comes back.
Quickly, though, you had a 9. So, you feel pretty strongly about what he's done.
Don't think you could ask much more from this guy, particularly since he missed a lot of training camp. The way he's played has been excellent.
I think he looks a lot like Dennis, did out there. It reminds me a lot of this guy.
The silence is deafening. All right, moving on. The chances Kenny Young starts even after C.J. Mosley returns. 10 being that he's going to start, 1 being somebody's been drinking on set. So let's see what we got here. Cliff with the 7, 8, and a 2. All right, Garrett, you feel like, but he's starting alongside C.J. Mosley.
He's not going to start over C.J.
Not starting
Mosley.
over.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's starting over C.J. Mosley. I'm saying that he's going to start next to him. I think that he's proven to me that he's good enough to be in the starting lineup. He flies around the ball. He led the team in tackles on Sunday. I think he's going to be out there. It's probably going to be, in my mind, C.J. Mosley and Kenny Young moving forward.
You don't think so, Dennis?
I don't think you can just give him the starting spot. You have to look at the other position, and Peanut Owasu has played really, really well too, and you really can't take him off the field to put Kenny Young. Now, will Kenny Young play? Yeah, he'll play a lot. And he'll be in a rotation. He'll be able to give those guys rests and blows during the game. But you can't say, okay, he's the starter now alongside CJ, because there's other players. You have Albert McClellan now in the mix. They have a group of guys that they can rotate through, and so you can't look at one as a surefire starter at this point.
Yeah, I think the best thing about the competition between Peanut and Kenny is that they both got better. And I think there was a lot of focus on who was going to win the job. But now that you have 2 guys playing well at that position, in addition to CJ, I think that speaks well for the Ravens defense as a whole. But I think down the line at some point, Kenny Young, even if it's not this year, he's going to be the guy. I just think that much of him as a player.
Our last topic is really a serious one, guys, so let's get real here. Zadarius Smith honored Ray Lewis after his sack with his version of the squirrel dance. So the sack was beautiful, but we're judging him on his version of Ray's dance. Dennis has already broken his tablet, so you can verbally say it, Dennis, or you can just start dancing. So Garrett's got a 1. You're going with a 6, and Dennis, how do you feel?
I will concur with Garrett. I'm giving it a 1, and my tablet doesn't work. Of course.
So quickly, Garrett, you speak for the other end of the spectrum. It was a poor showing.
I mean, it was not a good version. It was a little stiff. I give him credit for breaking it out in front of Ray Lewis. He was pretty fired up about that, but in terms of the execution, that left something to be desired.
And Cliff, you were okay with it.
Just the fact he had enough nerve to do it in front of 70,000. I can't
That's why I disagree. If you're going to have the nerve to do it, you better be pretty good at doing it. And I was actually with Joe Flacco last night after the game, and he showed me the video of Zadarius doing it, and we both laughed pretty hard. So that tells you it was a little stiff.
So if nothing else, Zadarius, thank you for providing us with some joy. Coming up next, we debut a new game, Ryan Mink's Pressure Cooker. A new addition to the unscripted set. It is the Pressure Cooker, straight from Ryan Mink's kitchen. Allegedly was clean last night. We'll see. And the way this segment's going to work is that the panel have decided on some topics. It could be a player, a coach, an area of the game that's under the microscope, under pressure going into Sunday night against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going to describe it, make their argument, and then, for dramatic effect, throw it in the pressure cooker. So, Garrett, why don't you kick us off?
Kicking things off here, I'll start with Brandon Carr. I mean, this is a guy, the Ravens are going up against the Steelers this week, and the Steelers have a good player on their side, Antonio Brown. Obviously, this year has been a little chaotic for Brown and the Steelers, but I still think he's obviously one of the best receivers in the game. Last year, when the Ravens faced the Steelers late in the season without Jimmy Smith on the field, Antonio Brown went off. He had 11 catches for over 200 yards, and Antonio Brown is going to spend a lot of the day matched up against Brandon Carr, and Brandon Carr needs to be able to slow him down. Now, it's going to be a team effort. I expect Marlon Humphrey to spend a good portion of the day on Brown because he moves all over the field, Tavon Young also. But at the end of the day, I think Brandon Carr is going to be challenged. I mean, I look at Denver. Denver challenged Brandon Carr. He did not have a great game on Sunday. So I think that for the Ravens to win this game, he needs to play well, and the pressure is going to be on him on prime time against number 84. So with that said, I'll go ahead and put that name right here in the pressure cooker.
Sold it.
Yeah.
Does anybody know what a pressure cooker is used for? Because I have no idea.
No, I heard something about
Is that not required for this segment? For me, it's not.
Your chef probably uses one.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell him to start incorporating that into the meals. For me, it's not one individual player. It's a unit, and it's the defensive front four the pass rush going against the Steelers offense. Now, the Steelers don't have Le'Veon Bell. I know that, but they are a talented group. They haven't quite played to their potential yet this season, but we know how much damage Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, and that unit can do. And Juju Smith-Schuster, a guy who's their leading receiver right now, not Antonio Brown. And so can we get to Ben Roethlisberger? We cannot give him all kinds of time to stand back there and throw the ball wherever he wants. So that front four, that unit, the pass rush, is going to be critical in order to have success defensively against that Pittsburgh Steelers team at home.
You got to put it in?
Throw it in.
I will put it in. I don't know how it works, but there you go.
I think we got to turn this thing on.
All right.
All right, Cliff, what do you got?
I've got Matthew Juden as my guy in the pressure cooker because week 1, he ended up getting fined for a hit on Josh Allen. Week 2, Andy Dalton, he gets a penalty for a hit on him. And then, of course, Sunday, the great return by Peanut after the interception gets wiped out because of a penalty for blocking the quarterback. Now, you could definitely argue that none of these infractions should have been called. He could make that case. I'm sure he doesn't agree with any of those calls on him. But for 3 straight weeks, he got himself in position where a violation could be called on him. And we all know, as Dennis said, getting pressure on Ben Roethlisberger against Pittsburgh is going to be a main focus of attention. Judon's done a good job of getting near the quarterback, but at this point, everyone asked Clay Matthews about this. You've got to show some restraint or make sure when you get to the quarterback, you don't do anything that could draw a flag. And if he does, that's the type of thing that could hurt him, not only going forward. I think now the refs might start looking for him if he continues to put himself in this position. So I'm going to put Mr. Judon in the pressure cooker.
Oh, you did a little flair there,
Yes,
Cliff.
sir.
So you guys have touched on a number of things that need to happen, will happen against the Steelers, but we love keys. So if you could pick 1 to 2 things in this game that need to happen for Baltimore to win in Pittsburgh, they would be what? We'll start with Garrett again.
I'll go back to the well in terms of containing Antonio Brown. You know, he's been the guy late in games throughout the past couple of seasons. Go back to Christmas Day 2 years ago, last year, late in the season. He had that huge game that I mentioned earlier. If you can limit him, I think the Ravens win this game.
And I know I mentioned the pass rush against Ben Roethlisberger and company, but I think the key to this game will be the Ravens' offensive line protecting Joe Flacco. Like I mentioned before, it is difficult to play offensive line on the road. This is going to be a loud, raucous crowd and environment. Can they protect him, give him time to deliver the football?
Yeah, I'll go with their continued success in the red zone. I don't think the Steelers can stop the Ravens from moving the football, but I think it's imperative for the Ravens to score touchdowns when they get close because I think the Steelers are going to score too. I think it could be a shootout, and if the Ravens continue this efficiency in the red zone, could be one of those last team that has the ball wins the game. I think if they settle for field goals too much, they could lose a close one. So I'll go with red zone efficiency.
It's still early, but we've seen as recent as Sunday conditions. Is it one of those things where you'd almost hope, Dennis, as a player, to have it be one of those nasty nights in Pittsburgh? Because it seems to almost behoove this team?
We've played really well in it, but as a player, no, I don't want it to be nasty or rainy or windy or whatever it may be, because I want to catch a lot of footballs and I want to be able to grip the ball when I'm out there. And so if I'm a player, I'm hoping for a great, clear, beautiful night in Pittsburgh. I don't know how often you get those in Pittsburgh, but that's what I would be hoping for. But for this Ravens team and the success, maybe it should be an ugly, kind of muddy, wet day.
Yeah.
I agree with what Cliff said. I think this could be a last team that has the ball wins the game. The Ravens offense, like I mentioned earlier, they, to me, look explosive. They can put up points in a hurry. Last year's game, I believe, was 38-39, and it was one of those last team to have the ball wins, and I think that could certainly be the case again on Sunday.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh looks more human than they've looked in a number of years, basically, obviously, without Le'Veon Bell being a big part of that. Well, if you liked Pressure Cooker or you didn't, let Ryan Mink know on Twitter and also criticize how dirty his pressure cooker is. Coming up next, though, we talk more about this Pittsburgh game coming up. Guys, it's prediction time here to close out the show. As often we do, not necessarily a scorer who wins, but Garrett, something you think you'll see?
I think we'll see a big play from Joe Flacco to Smokey Brown. They've been in sync all summer through the start of the first 3 games, and I think that continues. I think from a national standpoint, Smokey Brown's kind of flying under the radar a little bit as he did during the free agency process. I think in a primetime game, this is his opportunity to go out there and shine.
Well, I know I added John Brown to both my fantasy teams, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. I think to kind of piggyback off what Garrett said, I think you're going to see Joe Flacco throw for over 350 yards in this game. And you look at what he did in the rain last Sunday against the Broncos, against a very good defensive front and back end for the Broncos. He threw for 230-something yards in the first half. Now they shut it down a little bit in the second half based on how that game went. But this is a Steelers defense that has not been good in the first 2 weeks of the regular season. They're going to be tested again when they play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so it'll be interesting.
Who's the quarterback on your fantasy team, by the way?
It was Russell Wilson, and now it's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you can't.
It's
not Joe Flacco if that's what you were getting at.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
He was already taken when I was drafting. I'll go with that story. But no, I think he's gonna have a big day against the Steelers defense, and he always plays well up in Pittsburgh. You look at the last couple games there; he's done very well.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Alex Collins. I think that the Ravens are going to have some running success against Pittsburgh. Collins is ready, I think, for a breakout game. I have no trust in the Steelers' defense. I think Collins might go over 100 in this game.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of Ravens Unscripted. Guys, thanks so much for stopping by. Enjoy the latest installment of Ravens Steelers. We'll be back here next week to wrap it up. Enjoy the game, everybody.